Now let's see why we need another feature in AWS called roles. Let me explain that. Let's take a simple example. Let's say we have a user, a group, right? So we have this user and she, sorry for my bad drawing here, she is a manager. And this manager belongs to three groups. She manages three groups. Let's talk about what three groups she manages and what are the permission associated with this particular user for that. So this manager is managing QA group. This manager is maybe managing production, maybe managing other groups also. So this is a person who is responsible for managing multiple groups, and he or she is required to log into different location. Let's go ahead and talk about that, how everything would be working for her. Okay, let's give it a minute, let the bigger font come in, and we'll select it. This is better. So this is manager. We have two groups, QA group, then we have dev group, and then we have admin group. And in these groups, we have different policies applied. So let's say in QA group, there is a policy which says S3 allow, dev group has S3 deny, and admin group have a permission called S3 list, only this. And she belongs to three groups. Let me try to make sure like this. She is member of these three groups. Now, she issues a call which says delete S3 bucket. My question to you is, what would be the result of this call? Will this be successful or will it be denied? What would happen in this particular condition? She belongs to three groups: S3 allow, S3 deny, and S3 list. All right, right guess. Everyone has guessed it, so that is deny. Now, if she wants to delete a bucket, let's say, so what she has to do? She has to call an admin and say, hey admin, can you help me here? Can you please remove me from the dev group, because that is blocking me from performing some action which I want to perform. So please admin, remove me for a while from the dev group. Let me complete my deletion and add me back again into dev group. Now, is it technically possible? Yes. Is it very practical? Answer is no. You can't keep on asking admin, hey, add me in this group, remove me from that group. That is very complicated situation. Instead of that, what we give here something called roles. So roles is basically a temporary access which is given to you. So right now, when I'm delivering a training to you, I am into a presenter role. I am presenting. Later, Alex and Prasad would be presenting, so they would become presenter. Roles are represented by a cap or hat in AWS. So what roles are, let me go ahead and quickly talk about it. So roles is a mechanism which you temporarily assume by which you can perform some tasks. So let me talk about some of the stuff. So in IAM, you can have a user, you can have group or resources, you can have a role. This is a representation of a role. So you wear a hat, like Alex is currently wearing a hat of chat support. In next 5 minutes, he would become the presenter and he would be presenting. So that is how the role switches. What you are doing, you are wearing one hat and removing another hat. At a time, you can assume one role. So instead of this, what I can do, I can say, instead of this manager, let me create a QA role for you. Let me create a dev role for you, and let me create a admin role for you. And instead of adding you to the membership of these groups, I would allow you to assume these roles. You do not log into a role. You assume a role. Like currently I have assumed role of a presenter. Alex and Prasad are in chat support. Similarly, I may be assuming a role of chat support once Alex and Prasad are presenting. So I assume a role. You do not log into a role. You always assume a role, and at a time, you can assume only one role. Simple example, if you are coming from Linux world, so in Linux, you would be here, right? And you would do your command ls. Afterward, you may issue a command called su, super user. And what it would bring you to, it would bring you to this prompt, which is your super user prompt, sudo or su, right? That is exactly what is happening when you are assuming a role. Because in this case, you assumed and become someone else, finished your work. Let's say you performed some RM command there. Once your work was done, you did exit and you are again back to your standard role. That exactly. Can role assume after other role? Nismo, not a stupid question, very valid question. Think of it. How many hat I can wear on one head? So I can assume one role, and if I assume another role, I am signing out of from that. So at a time, I can wear only one hat. So either I can be QA, and if I say I want to now become dev, so I would be logging off from QA and become dev, and then I would be logging off from dev and become admin. So at a time, we could be able to access only one, not beyond it, right? So that's how this would work. So question from Cynthia, could you explain the function of access management in a context with a lot of policies and roles? Uh, um, I'm not clear on that question, Cynthia. I don't understand what is access management in context. If you could elaborate, I may try to answer it if we get time. Otherwise, you can send the question on LinkedIn and I would be happy to answer there. So one role at a time you can assume, and afterward you can become someone else. And a good part, roles can be assumed across accounts too. Should not be a problem. So you don't have to always assume role within one account. Let me give an example. So here I am admin underscore ash in the account. We start with 7399 or something. If you see this, these are different roles which I can assume. I can now become a QA admin. I can become a dev admin. I can become a prod admin, and these are representing different account in my environment. So what I can do, I can assume role if the need be. I assumed a role of a QA admin in a different account altogether. I would perform my work. Once my work is done, I would then prefer back to come back to my own thing. So if you see this, right now I am a dev admin. Once my work is done, we would be able to have a switch back, or I can switch to another role, but at a time only one hat on your head, not beyond it, should not be a problem, right? See, does role overrule the policy of deny? Answer is no. Policy evaluation is same. Let me show that thing into a minute. You will get better answer there, right? So this is one way. So in IAM, what I can do, I can create these four things. I can create users, I can create groups or resources, I can create roles, and I can create policy, right? Policies can be attached to roles also. So I can say, if I assume admin role, what can I do and what I cannot do? So policies can be attached to a role, and it would apply to that role when somebody assumes that role. You can attach a policy to a group, should not be a problem at all. Policy can be attached to a user also, that is also not at all a problem. So policies can be attached to a group, to a role and user, and evaluation would be same. If there is a deny, it is denied. What other things can happen? A user can belong to a group, right? We talked about it. So user can belong to a group, no problem at all on that. What else? A user can assume a role, right? I explained to you that I become a dev admin and I perform some of my tasks. So that is possible. You can assume a role if the need be. Should not be an issue. Now, one more thing which we do not have a lot of time to cover, but a role can be assumed by a resource. Like I want this EC2 machine to talk to S3. One option is I can put my credential within that EC2 machine in a hard coded format, or I could attach a role. I could attach a role to EC2 and then it would allow permission for access of S3 resource. Or I can create a Lambda function, give that Lambda function permission to talk to a DynamoDB table. So that is all possible. We could attach roles even to resources like glue crawler, EC2 instances, Lambda function. These all can have their roles assigned. So that resources can assume a role. Role can be assumed by a resource also, and that can give them permission to access something else. And this is what we recommend whenever you have different aspect of access required. So we recommend that resources should be assigned a role which they can use to access other resources. A user can also directly access a resource, that is possible. In some cases, A policy can also be attached to a resource like S3 bucket, then API gateway, Lambda function. They also have a policy attached directly to them that is called a resource policy. Right. So that's what IAM is all about. Let me summarize what the IAM discussions we had today. We talked about what IAM is. IAM basically has four common entities: user, group, role, and policies. Policies can be attached to roles. Policy can be attached to groups. Policies can be attached to users. A user can belong to a group, can be member of a group. A user can assume a role, right? Group cannot assume a role, only a user can assume a role. A user assumes a role, and a role can be assumed by resources like Amazon EC2 or AWS Lambda function, and that resource can then go ahead and access other resources if the need be, and afterwards you should be able to give that permission to user, and policies can be attached also to resources. That time it is called a resource policy. So hopefully everyone is clear on IAM. Now what I have also done in the slide which you will be getting in the PDF format, I have bifurcated policies. So policies are IAM, there is resource policies. Policies can be inline, policies can be managed, managed can be done by AWS, managed can be by customer, and I have put some more information so that you can understand what these policies are and what they belong to and what is the use case of these individual policies. So I have provided all these stuff. Okay. So this is what will help you to understand the bifurcation between policies. We should be able to utilize all the stuff. This would be available to you. One more thing, IAM support identity federation. What does it mean? Chances are that you won't be using IAM to create 10,000 users. You may already have Active Directory, you may already have LDAP or something else. So what you would do, you would just say, hey, I am pointing you to an identity source and please go and verify users from there. So see this identity provider, like I have SSO. Similarly, you could add your Active Directory or Shibboleth or OpenID Connect so that you should be able to utilize it. Okay. Then we have a policy simulator. So this policy simulator link I would also provide into the resources. So that would help you to identify any policy conflict. Anytime you have a question in your exam which says I need temporary access, that time we prefer roles. So roles is always there, and we have created policy evaluation logic, talked about it. So for all API call, all applicable policies are combined. If there is a matching deny, decision is denied. If not, then we say if there is allow, we allow X statement. And if nothing matches, then we specify deny on that. So we could utilize that, right? So that's how my policy evaluation logic work. And as always, I have added a service summary card here in all W format. What, when, why, where, who, how much. That will help you to understand things in much better way. So that's all on IAM. Now, IAM is a service which is very deep. It looks smaller and easier, but there are a lot of aspects associated with that, like identity providers. Then you could utilize here archive rule, then credential report, organization activity, SCPs. All these components are there. So probably it should have given you a good starting point. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. I would be happy to walk you through any remaining thing which you may have not clear. Right? The slide would be available to you, so you should have all these access on that.